morning. First of all, I'd like to say I bring greetings from the West Coast, from a number of IECs there. They send their love and their greetings to you. There's quite a few of them out there. We can get them all back here at some point. Well, as John said, I have my personal story to share, and I probably have one of the easiest things because there's not a lot of documentation when it's my story. But I also have one of the most difficult things because to take a lifetime and put it into about 25 minutes is a difficult thing. So what I thought I would do is break up my experience in IECs in about 4 chapters. I'm kind of looking at my life as a book right now. And the 4 chapters will have titles, and I'll give you those, and then I'll try and collapse my history into those little chapters. So the first chapter is titled, It Never Occurred to Me. I grew up in the early 1950s in a kind of Catholic soup, where I felt surrounded by Catholics, immersed in all things Catholic. And just like many of you, I suppose, I played with Wonder Bread and Necco wafers, offering Mass and Candy Communion to my friends. And as I grew up, I mirrored the Catholic world that I lived in. I was born into a very big Polish Catholic family. I attended Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic nursing school. And then after that, I went to Gonzaga University. And after that, I even married in a Catholic Jesuit retreat house. There were times through all those years growing up, especially probably at Gonzaga University, when I felt frustrated, kind of out of the norm, an outsider looking in on others. But it was always a vague melancholy, inarticulate and undefined within me. After graduating from Gonzaga, where I met my husband, we moved to Iowa. I lived in Davenport, Iowa for a number of years. And then we moved back to the West Coast, where I went back to my home parish, which is, if any of you know, the old Mission Trail along the coast of California. I was lucky enough to grow up at the old Mission in Carmel, which is not a bad place to grow up. And that was my parish growing up. But as Steve, my husband, and I came back to California, a new thing was happening in the Catholic Church, youth ministry. And when we moved back to my hometown of Carmel, I was hired as the first youth minister at that parish. And I was actually hired at 8 months pregnant. So that was a very interesting way to come into youth ministry. And I mention this moment because it is a really pivotal moment for me. On the day after my daughter Emily was born, this is the summer of 1980, 2 women friends visited me. One was a presentation sister and the other was a Catholic laywoman, both of whom were working at the Catholic Worker House in San Jose. And after the niceties of my daughter Emily, who was 1 day old, we were sitting out on my porch. Beautiful July California day. I remember that after all the niceties and talking about Emily and me, they began talking about what they were doing at Catholic Worker House. And they mentioned, almost in passing, we're celebrating Eucharist at the house. And I remember everything kind of stopped, in those commercials on TV where everything stops. And that's about what happened to me. Everything stopped. To this day, I can still remember what I was wearing, my daughter in the bassinet next to me, the women by my side. It was as if there had been a crack in the cosmic egg of my being. Some space opened up within me. It had never occurred to me that that could be possible. It had never occurred to me in my Catholic soup world there was anything that I might do that might be different. It was for other people to do, but not for me to do or for my friends to do. But a seed was planted that day, a seed space within me, the space that grew and grew. I spent the next 7 years as a youth minister at the mission in Carmel. And fast forward through those years of intense work, but also increasing frustration and anxiety and some depression even. And I weathered a divorce through those years. And I had to return to working as a nurse because of the financial situation that they paid youth ministers very little. So the vague melancholy took more and more shape, and I began to be much more articulate about my displeasure and my frustration and smoldering anger, but most importantly, a profound and soulful hunger that wasn't being fed. So chapter 2. The title of chapter 2, See, I am doing a new thing, do you not perceive it? Out of all those feelings came the memory of that seeded space of possibility moment. I called some of my friends who had been with me in youth ministry, some of the facilitators of the small groups that we had formed. And I invited them using the same words the two women had used with me. I said, come, celebrate Eucharist in my house. And they did. I went down to the local church and I borrowed a missalette. And I just began. I think I was certainly fueled by anger. That's all I can think about. I was just furious. After leaving youth ministry, I couldn't find a church that really fed me in any way. So I borrowed the missalette. We gathered on the deck of my house, and little church began. We followed the lectionary. We used Paulo Freire dialogue homilies. We celebrated seasonal services and activities. And our community's name rose without much fanfare. Little Church, little L, little C, for the small but universal group that we were coming to be. A few Catholics, a few Episcopalians, a Lutheran or two, a couple unchurched people, and later a Jewish man. 1 year led into a few, and we began to realize, almost by accident, that none of us was angry anymore. We had done a new thing, as Isaiah said. We realized that just by taking action, our frustration and our anger was gone. And we saw that our deep hunger was being satisfied through the Eucharistic community of our giving to one another. A community of openness, of regularity, creativity, and sharing. And it was around this time that one of the little church members wrote this poem. Very scared we were, and very mad. Complacency displaced by action, we met at Vicky's house. A faction, a reaction, a small little huddle, our minds in a muddle. We felt cheated, deleted from the big church. Scared we were, and mad. Action combined with a plan, we met at Vicky's little house. A clan, a token man. We were no more than just a small core. We burned the rules of big church. Scared we weren't, nor mad. The plan, encouraged by growth, we met at the little church house. A group stirring stone soup, our hearts were free. We could just be. We had found peace, release from the big church. Happy we are and glad. Growth combined with energy, we now meet as the little church. A community with unity, filled with hope and ways to cope. With strength from above, love fills the little church. Chapter 3. So we have the first chapter, that never occurred to me. The second chapter, see, I am doing a new thing, do you not perceive it? And the third chapter is entitled, Unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies. Before we knew it, our little church celebrated its 5th and then 6th anniversary. And the little church community could see and called me and even challenged me to take a month off of my nursing and attend a month of classes at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, which I did in the summer of 1995. Of course, the month was incredible for me. It was like coming home to a country that you'd always known but had never visited. That month of July in 1995 at PSR was like stepping into heaven for me. I think I didn't speak much that entire year. I mean, that entire month. It felt like a year. But after that 1 month, I returned to my nursing job the next day, and everything began to fall apart. Within a year, I had left nursing. The little church released and encouraged me to move to the San Francisco Bay Area, where I accepted a position as the program administrator at the Franciscan Retreat Center there, San Damiano. And within 3 months, I had enrolled as a student at the GTU. It was during this year that another Eucharistic community in Fremont Catholic community, called me, found me, and I found them. And 2 members of Fremont Catholic community are here, Mary Murray and Pat Gallagher. Want to just wave your hands? Pat Gallagher spoke here at your last IEC conference. Over the 7 years that I was at San Damiano, I was doing retreats and workshops, but it was over those same 7 years that I became one of the pool of presiders to celebrate liturgy at Fremont Catholic Community. And I have been richly blessed and welcomed and fed over and over by this community. They have been the little hothouse for me of my growing plant. So we're on to chapter 4. The vision must be followed by the venture. After leaving San Damiano in February of 2004, I began to set up my own spiritual direction practice, retreat, and workshop ministry, and I called it Take Wing. And for 5 years, I have been what I call an itinerant minister. I am not ordained, but I simply go where I'm invited. And so when the economy started to dip, I was doing that full time. I had to go back into nursing because things were getting very close to the bone. But in the winter of 2008, I was invited to work with a group of about 40 or 50 people in the Sonoma County area. CTA folks, Renew people, Peace and Justice folks. They all were coming together, frustrated in some ways, and anxious and desiring more in other ways. And I was invited to come and facilitate their coming together and becoming an intentional Eucharistic community. And so they began with a weekend retreat. And the weekend retreat was keynoted by Jim Callan and Mary Rammerman of Corpus Christi and then Spiritus Christi, which I'm sure they've been here before, have they? It was a marvelous weekend retreat. I think we had close to 80 people attending that retreat. And the moment that Mary Rammerman celebrated Eucharist at the sort of the end of the morning on Sunday, there was almost a perceptible of all those people gathered. And then, over the next 9 months, we met for day-long retreats that I led. And we came to look at how we might dream and design and develop what we valued and bring it forward into a Eucharistic community. There are 3 people from this growing community here today, Cindy and Dan Borman and Jim McFadden. If you would raise your hands and stand up. There's Jim. This community, after meeting probably 3, 4, maybe 5 times, became what is now known as Emmaus. Emmaus meets on the 2nd and 4th Sunday afternoons of every month at a welcoming and centrally located Episcopal church. This intentional community is now already growing. After only being, I think we started our first facilitated presidership was it in June? Is that right? Or something like that. So already now they have about 60 participants at every Mass. Presiders arise from within the community, though outside ordained and non-ordained presiders are invited from time to time. What is so heartening for me is that their vision of what they valued has been followed by the venture. They have ventured forward and have become an intentional Eucharistic community, which is growing due to the fact that each person provides what is theirs to offer according to their skills and abilities. The mission statement is just now being finalized, but Emmaus is really on the road now. So in closing, I'd like to just go over the 4 chapters of the story of my book. The first chapter, it never occurred to me. For me, this crack is an essential part of a process of staying open to the new, of allowing the cracks in our being to let our spirit out and let Sophia in. The second chapter, see, I am doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? When Jesus called the apostles, he didn't say, see the plan, now come. He said, come and see, come and see. Come first, and then you'll see where it all unfolds. Chapter 3, a lesser grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies. Don't be afraid when everything falls apart. To me, in my life, this has happened many times, and it seems to me it's the surest sign that Sophia is at work, cleaning out our house, cleaning out the closets of things that are too small for us, worn out, in the way for Sophia to transform them into really new and wondrous things. And chapter 4, the vision. The vision must be followed by the venture. Václav Havel, the Czech poet and statesman, said this: the vision must be followed by the venture. It is not enough to stare up the steps. We must step up the stairs. And so I know that this is a growing time where visions are happening everywhere. I certainly have felt that Mother Sophia has been swirling around in my life. And I am grateful that Sophia, in her wondrous wind, has blown me here to be with the Eucharistic communities here today. And I hope that in the sessions that follow, we can go into lots more detail. And this evening at 8:15, I will be offering one of the dialogue sessions on, if anyone's interested in how to look at forming a Eucharistic community and sharing resources and talking about prayer practices and things. So I am, as I say, very grateful that Mother Sophia has allowed me to be with you today. Thank you very much.